I also began to experience a funny kind of vibration. And I went to it was as if my body were shaking, but there was no feeling of shaking. And on this one famous night, as we're in 1958, I was lying in bed on a Friday night, waiting for this vibration to end so I could go to sleep. And as I was lying there, as I was waiting for this vibration to end, suddenly I felt something bumping against my shoulder. And that, of course, is part of the history when I discovered that what I was bumping against was the ceiling of my bedroom. Down there in the bed below me was my wife lying in bed, and beside her was a man in bed. And I says, "What kind of dream is this? This is a strange dream." And then this great shock came over me, because the person in bed with my wife was me. You begin to find out that there are some holes in the cracks, and that's when you begin to regrow and begin to, so that successively you begin to start on your way out again, and you begin to have a higher and higher orbit as you learn more, and in these successive lives, till finally you got escape velocity, and then you do go home and go get into a new game with the Maker. And that's only one, and seems endless options that one can take. You can be a maker yourself if you want. What you learn here are the basic tools of being a maker.
Robert Monroe, who at the time was a successful businessman in the radio industry in the United States during the 1950s, had no connection to the spiritual, philosophical, or religious realms in his early years. His main focus was on his family and advancing his professional career. However, all of this suddenly changed when, completely unexpectedly, he began experiencing something that his rational mind could not explain. One day, involuntarily, Monroe found himself outside his physical body, exploring what he described as a second body, which took him to realities far beyond the known. This discovery launched him on a journey into an expanded state of consciousness, where he observed that death is not an end, but simply a transition to another state of existence. These experiences drove him to deeply investigate the nature of human consciousness and its interaction with energetic dimensions beyond time and space. As he delved deeper into his understanding, Monroe recognized the human being as an energy system constantly interacting with higher forces. These revelations led him to document his experiences, making him a pioneer and reference in the field of out-of-body experiences and the exploration of non-ordinary states of consciousness. The origins. It all began in 1958, when Monroe, at 43 years old, started experiencing phenomena that defied any logical explanation. One of the most shocking occurred one afternoon while he was about to rest. Just a few minutes after lying down, a powerful vibration shook his body with such intensity that it caused him deep fear. Puzzled by the magnitude of what was happening, he tried to get up, and after a brief effort, the vibrations finally subsided. Worried by these inexplicable sensations, Monroe consulted doctors and psychologists who, to his surprise, assured him that he was in perfect health. With this reassurance, he decided not to retreat, but to delve deeper into the unknown. Despite his initial fear, his curiosity led him to explore the origin of these experiences. It was then that, allowing himself to be carried away by the vibrations on a subsequent occasion, he found himself floating outside his physical body. Believing he had crossed the threshold of death, he was overcome by panic, which caused his fear to instantly return him to his body. Far from being an isolated event, these episodes began to repeat. Monroe, initially astonished and confused, eventually learned to master the art of separating from the physical body. Over the next 3 decades, Monroe intensely researched out-of-body experiences with the goal of scientifically validating the existence of other planes of reality and intelligences beyond the physical plane. At first, Monroe was perplexed. Lacking any frame of reference for what was happening to him, he sought answers in conventional science, but found no satisfactory explanation. It was then that, through readings and contact with people exploring these phenomena, he began to find answers in realms outside traditional physics. These experiences, which initially unsettled him, led him to delve into the world of astral projection, discovering that he was not the only one experiencing such situations. Over time, Monroe realized that he was interacting with what he would call his second body, a concept he preferred to use instead of esoteric terms like astral body. Through his research and personal experiences, he gathered information about this phenomenon, which, though historically linked to occult and esoteric beliefs, Monroe began studying from a more structured and less superstitious approach. Out-of-body experiences, OBEs. Out-of-body experiences, or OBEs, refer to moments when a person feels that their consciousness has separated from their physical body. During an OBE, the person perceives floating outside their physical body, viewing their own body from another perspective, or even traveling to different places, dimensions, or realities. Astral travel, or out-of-body experiences, commonly known as OBEs by Robert Monroe, is not a new phenomenon. In fact, it has been widely documented in various spiritual traditions throughout history. Since ancient times, various cultures have described experiences of separation from the physical body. In Egypt, it was believed that the Ba, a part of the soul, could travel to other realms, even in life, as detailed in the Book of the Dead. In Hindu tradition, spiritual practices include siddhis, supernatural abilities that allow travel to other planes of existence. Shamanic cultures, from Siberia to America, also documented these travels, where shamans crossed the physical and spiritual worlds in search of healing or knowledge. In Tibetan Buddhism, texts such as the Bardo Thodol speak of the intermediate states of the soul after death, while advanced practices allow for experimentation with the rainbow body. Even the Bible mentions experiences that may relate to this second body, reflected in the ecstatic experiences of Christian saints who accessed other realities beyond the physical plane during moments of intense spiritual connection. These experiences, though common in many spiritual and religious traditions, largely remained in the realm of the mystical, until Robert Monroe decided to study the phenomenon systematically. As Monroe's OBEs became more frequent, he realized that what he was experiencing was not an isolated phenomenon. In 1971, he published Journeys Out of the Body, a book documenting his experiences and presenting to a wider audience the possibility that our consciousness could transcend the physical body. During the years Monroe performed his out-of-body travels, he discovered that the second body could interact with the physical plane. On one occasion, he decided to test this by pinching a friend while in his non-physical form. To his surprise, she felt the pain, and days later showed him the bruise left by the pinch. On another occasion, while visiting a friend who was a medium, he was perceived by her as a whitish mist. Not knowing it was Robert, the medium ordered the presence to leave her home. At that moment, Monroe experienced a powerful force that abruptly pushed him back into his physical body. Later, he was able to corroborate the story with his friend. The impact of his work was so great that suddenly, people from all over the world began to share their own out-of-body experiences, strengthening the idea that Monroe was on the right path. The Monroe Institute and Hemi-Sync technology. Driven by his desire to understand more about human consciousness, Monroe founded the Monroe Institute in 1974, a research center dedicated to studying out-of-body experiences and helping people explore their own altered states of consciousness. One of Monroe's most significant contributions was the development of Hemi-Sync technology, a sound system designed to synchronize the brain's hemispheres using specific binaural frequencies. This technology, developed by the Monroe Institute, enables individuals to reach deep states of meditation, relaxation, and, in some cases, out-of-body experiences. Robert Monroe and the CIA. A lesser-known aspect of Monroe's life is his involvement in some CIA projects. The effectiveness of the programs developed by the Monroe Institute caught the attention of the CIA, which was documented both in the declassified Gateway Project 2003 and the Stargate Project. These programs showed that altered states of consciousness, like those induced by Monroe's Hemi-Sync technology, could help facilitate out-of-body experiences and remote viewing. This caught the attention of the US government, which saw potential for use in intelligence and espionage operations. In the Gateway Project, the effects of these states were studied in collaboration with the military. Wayne McDonnell, who led the study, sought to understand how the mind could operate beyond space and time from a scientific perspective. On the other hand, the Stargate Project, focused on remote viewing, utilized these psychic abilities for espionage. Although Monroe did not directly participate, his work influenced the training of agents, such as Joe McMoneagle, who used techniques from the Monroe Institute for remote viewing sessions. Both projects reflect Robert Monroe and his institute's profound influence on the official exploration of the limits of human consciousness. The research supported by the CIA took Monroe's discoveries and methods seriously. They recognized that his exploration of alternative realities not only broadened understanding of the mind's potential, but also provided valuable insights into the mysteries of space, time, and hidden dimensions. Now that we have explored some key aspects of Robert Monroe's life and work, it's time to delve into what is truly essential. What did Monroe discover on those enigmatic journeys outside his body? What revelations did he bring back from those realms beyond physical reality, where time and space seemed to dissolve and consciousness expanded into unexplored territories? Beyond ordinary reality. In his journeys with the second body, or astral body, Monroe began to categorize the different realities he explored. He named these different levels of existence as the first scenario, second scenario, and third scenario, distinguishing between the worlds he perceived. These scenarios represented different dimensions of consciousness. First scenario. The first scenario refers to the physical reality in which we live and experience daily life. Monroe defines this scenario as the material world to which we are accustomed, where our experiences are limited to the laws of physics and our physical interactions. Second scenario. The second scenario, described by Monroe, is a non-physical realm whose laws of movement and matter barely relate to those of the material world we know. It is a vast expanse of dimensions and depths unfathomable to the conscious mind, and whose limits remain unknown. Here reside what we commonly associate with the notions of heaven and hell, but these are merely facets of this same scenario. This space is inhabited by entities of varying intelligence with whom it is possible to communicate. Within this realm, the fundamentals of reality as we know it transform. The concept of time, as we experience it in the physical plane, disappears. In the second scenario, past, present, and future coexist, flowing continuously without the cyclical divisions to which we are accustomed. Time ceases to be a useful measure, whether in microseconds or millennia, as everything seems to happen in an eternal now. One of the primary laws governing this scenario is that thought becomes the fundamental force of creation. In this state, existence itself is defined by what one thinks. Thought creates energy, shapes matter, and allows both perception and communication. Monroe suspected that the being or soul in the second scenario was merely a vortex or an organized form of energy, shaped according to this primordial law. Here, "you are what you think" becomes a literal reality. In the second scenario, as Monroe describes it, reality intertwines with our physical world, but with very different rules. His concept of vibrations and frequencies suggests that multiple worlds operate at different frequencies, with the physical world being only one of them. Just as waves in the electromagnetic spectrum coexist in the same space without directly interacting, it may be that the second scenario is also present here, but beyond our perceptual reach, since our senses and the tools that extend from them are not designed to capture these other realities. Monroe emphasizes that our limited perception is reflected in the history of science, where we did not know of inaudible sounds until we created instruments to detect them. Similarly, until recently, we only knew the electromagnetic spectrum as light and heat, but now we know there are frequencies invisible to our senses, such as X-rays, microwaves, and radio waves. According to Monroe, this illustrates how our perception of the world is just a small part of the larger reality. Similarly, our understanding of non-physical planes or subtle energies is still limited. These energies, although currently imperceptible to us, might be key to understanding our existence beyond the physical body. In the second scenario, thought and emotion manifest immediately. Reality is a direct projection of the desires and fears of its inhabitants. Monroe recounts that in his early experiences in this space, he felt completely overwhelmed by repressed emotions, especially fear. Fear of the unknown, of non-physical beings, of death, of God, of breaking rules, and of facing pain. He observed that the areas closest to the physical world in the second scenario are mostly populated by beings who retain their emotions, often disturbed, and whose behavior may seem incoherent or insane. These beings may include those who are alive but asleep under the effect of drugs, or even those who have died but remain trapped in unresolved emotions. According to Monroe, this environment is anything but pleasant and reflects the internal struggle to adapt to the emotional laws that govern the second scenario. Learning to navigate this emotionally overwhelming world is a long process, similar to a child growing up. Monroe suggests that this adaptation might be the first thing that happens after death, at least for those who have not learned to cope with their emotions. This process of learning and adaptation becomes a painful but essential experience for progressing in this other plane. Throughout his experiences, Monroe describes how controlling emotions is key to understanding and mastering this new level of existence, and how only through experimentation and confronting repressed fears and desires can one advance in the second scenario. In his second book, Far Journeys, Robert Monroe introduces the unsettling concept of Loosh. In one of his experiences in the second scenario, Monroe received what he described as a packet of information in which the story of the creation of Earth and humanity was revealed. According to this account, Loosh is a form of energy produced by the emotional experiences of living beings, especially humans. Monroe describes how cosmic entities would have created Earth as a garden or farm to cultivate this energy, generated by intense emotions such as pain, suffering, love, and worship, which is somehow collected by these entities. Although many have interpreted this idea as a metaphor for human exploitation by higher forces, Monroe came to understand it from a broader, more metaphysical perspective, and not necessarily a negative one. If there is interest, I could make a future video exploring this topic in depth. Third scenario. Third scenario, as described by Monroe, was a world surprisingly similar to ours, with its own nature, cities, people, and social structures. However, upon closer inspection, he noticed that, despite the superficial similarities, technology and scientific progress were completely different. In this world, there were no electrical devices or sources of energy like electricity or oil, and transportation was done through steam trains without the modern technologies we take for granted. Monroe also experienced something peculiar. At one point, he began to inhabit the body of a person from that world. Despite being aware of his own identity, he felt drawn to that body, as if temporarily possessing it. This experience allowed him to access the memories and emotions of the person, suggesting that the second body has the ability to interact deeply with the beings and realities it visits, sometimes involuntarily. Monroe concluded that the body he inhabited was not that of a foreign person, but rather a copy of himself, an alternate version possibly existing in a parallel universe. This raised the idea that this scenario could represent a parallel reality where another version of him led a different life. For Monroe, confirming that out-of-body experiences, OBEs, are real has enormous implications, both for the person experiencing them and for humanity as a whole. One of humanity's greatest fears is the fear of death, the uncertainty about what happens after the cessation of physical life. However, experiencing an OBE firsthand completely dissipates that fear. The person who experiences it not only loses the fear of death, but their perspective and values radically change, similar to what happens with those who have had near-death experiences. The purpose of existence. In his writings and experiences, Robert Monroe concludes that human life has a deeper purpose than simply existing in the physical plane. According to him, humans voluntarily choose to incarnate in this world to learn, experience, and evolve. However, once here, we forget that original purpose and become trapped in a cycle of rebirths due to our attachment to the human experience and the emotions it provokes. Monroe also introduces the concept of escape velocity, an energy we need to break free from the cycle of rebirths. This velocity decreases the more we cling to emotions and the human experience. To recover it, it is necessary to increase our vibration by elevating our level of consciousness. In his vision, the physical plane offers the opportunity to learn to control energy. Everyday actions like moving the body or manipulating objects in this plane have a huge impact on other dimensional levels, granting humans a kind of creative superpower to manipulate energy in higher scenarios, such as the second scenario. Monroe believed that our existence here is an opportunity to learn and grow, but also a place where we could get trapped if we don't understand how to elevate ourselves and free ourselves from physical and emotional limitations. Although Robert Allan Monroe passed away in 1995, he left us a valuable legacy: the idea that reality is much vaster than what our ordinary senses allow us to perceive. He showed us that it is possible to explore beyond the physical boundaries and delve into the mysteries of consciousness. His life invites us to question what we understand as reality and to open our minds to infinite possibilities. On the other hand, the Monroe Institute continues to operate and develop new technologies and programs for the study of consciousness. Their research continues to inspire people around the world to explore beyond the known limits of the mind. That's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching until the end. See you soon.